My name is Celeste Parker, 36 years old, a divorce lawyer in Boston. 8 years ago, when I married Ethan, a renowned surgeon, I fought to have this house. More than 4,000 square feet, a 1-acre garden, and especially the sparkling pool I once called my reward for years of hard work. That pool was the only condition I set for marriage. It used to be my pride, but now it's the place that exposed a cruel truth. One afternoon I came home early. The water rippled unnaturally, 2 wine glasses still stained with bright red lipstick. And worse, the familiar silhouette of my best friend was swimming in that very pool. What would you do if you discovered your husband and your best friend had turned your dream home into a place of betrayal? Leave a comment, hit like, and subscribe to the channel to continue this story with me. If that afternoon at the window was the beginning of a nightmare, then 8 years earlier I truly believed I had stepped into paradise. Ethan Parker and I were often called the golden couple of our community. He was a talented heart surgeon, frequently appearing at charity fundraisers in his pristine white coat. I was a well-known divorce lawyer, having won no small number of major cases. Together we built a flawless image: successful, wealthy, admirable. The house I live in now, over 4,000 square feet with a deep blue pool out back, was once my dream. I still remember, during discussions about buying the house, Ethan wanted a modern entertainment room, while I insisted on one condition: it had to have a pool. After all the long hours at work, I want somewhere to let myself sink into the water, to feel like I still belong to myself. I had said, and Ethan smiled, pulling me into his arms. If that's what you want, then I'll make it happen. Back then, I believed his words were sincere. My best friend from college, Sienna Moore, was also part of that seemingly perfect picture. We met when we were young women full of dreams, sharing late-night study sessions and cheap instant noodles. Later, while I became a lawyer and she shifted to fitness coaching, our friendship remained intact. I once thought Sienna was like a sister who had walked through the years with me. The early days of marriage were genuinely sweet. After each successful surgery, Ethan would hold me and tell stories about the gratitude patients and their families showed him. I would share about grueling trials where I had to fight for women devastated by their husband's betrayal. We seemed like soulmates, aligned in vision, united in belief in justice and dedication. But cracks began with the smallest things, details that seemed harmless. I remember one evening as I cleared the dinner table, Ethan suddenly said, "I think I should learn how to maintain the pool. That way we won't have to call a service each time." I was surprised. For years, Ethan had never cared about such things. He was busy at the hospital, often working late into the night. I laughed softly, thinking it was a sweet sign of him wanting to share household burdens. "If you've got time to worry about pool water, I'd find that a little strange." He shrugged, then said offhandedly, "I just want to help you. You work too much." At the time my heart warmed. But later, when everything unraveled, that sentence echoed in my memory like a blade tearing open the truth. Not long after, I noticed something odd about Ethan's work schedule. He often said his surgeries lasted until late at night, but then one day I happened to hold the insurance report mailed to our house. I realized his logged work hours were even fewer than the year before. I held that paper, my heart pounding. It felt like the first dark puzzle pieces were beginning to appear, though I tried to deny them. As for Sienna, she started coming to my house more frequently with endless reasons. "My yoga bench broke, can I use your backyard?" Or, "I was passing by and wanted to see you for a bit." At first, I welcomed her, thinking it was natural for a best friend to visit. We had so many memories. I even joked with Ethan, "You'll have to deal with another woman hanging around, but at least Sienna isn't too bothersome." He smiled a little stiffly, but I didn't notice. Gradually, Sienna's visits coincided with times I was at work, leaving Ethan at home alone. I never suspected a thing because my trust in both of them was too great. But reality crept in through tiny cracks. A freshly laundered towel faintly scented with unfamiliar perfume, wine glasses with lipstick stains left on the patio table, or Ethan's evasive look whenever I asked about his long shifts. One weekend evening, I sat in the living room with Ethan, trying to find an explanation. "Ethan, lately you seem more stressed than usual. Is work difficult?" He answered curtly, "Just more complicated surgeries." I bit my lip. I had represented dozens of women in divorce cases, hearing how their husbands changed once affairs began. And now I saw the same signs replaying in my own life. Inside me, worry grew into a bleeding wound. But I wasn't the kind of woman to surrender easily. Outwardly, I stayed composed while inside cruel questions arose. Why could the man who once vowed to protect me look me in the eye and lie? And why could the friend who once held my hand through the years walk into this house as a destroyer? I didn't yet have answers. I only knew the small signs were lining up into a chain. And that chain would soon lead me to a truth I didn't want to believe but couldn't avoid. I still remember that morning clearly. I stepped into the bathroom after Ethan left for work, planning to run warm water to ease my fatigue. But when I opened the door, my eyes froze on several strands of golden hair clinging to the wet tiles. They were too long, too bright, and most importantly, not mine. My hair was chestnut brown, rarely shedding and never wrapping around the drain like that. I stood still for several seconds, my chest pounding. My hand shook as I picked them up, feeling as though I was touching living proof of a crime. I placed them in a tissue, then tucked it into my vanity drawer. That entire day my mind spun with one question: who was here? And did Ethan allow it? That evening when Ethan returned, he acted as if nothing had happened. He hung up his coat, loosened his tie, and said tiredly, "Today's surgery lasted almost 10 hours. I'm exhausted." I looked straight into his eyes, searching for a flicker of unease. But Ethan kept his calm face, though perhaps avoiding my gaze slightly. I asked nothing more. Any words now would only bring more lies. I had represented dozens of betrayed women, and nearly all had made the same mistake: believing explanations, letting the evidence slip away. That night, I opened my laptop and searched for private investigators. One name appeared: Frank Dawson, a former police officer known for marital investigations. I wrote down the number, hesitated a moment, then pressed call. A deep, raspy male voice answered. "Dawson here. How can I help?" "My name is Celeste Parker. I need to verify my husband's honesty. It's better if we meet in person. Tomorrow 8 a.m. Riverside Cafe. Can you come?" "Yes," I replied without hesitation. The next morning I sat in a corner of the small Riverside Cafe. When Frank walked in, I recognized him immediately. Tall, weathered face, sharp gray eyes. He pulled out a chair, sat down, and opened his notebook. "Tell me what you want." "I don't want speculation. I need the truth. If Ethan is cheating, I want undeniable proof." Frank took careful notes. "We'll install hidden cameras. The range. The pool, the living room, the entrances. But discreet. I don't want anyone suspecting." He raised an eyebrow. "You're clearly a lawyer." "Yes. And I know without evidence nothing can be done." 3 days later, the compact camera system was carefully installed in my house. I sat in my office, heavy-hearted, as I watched Frank attach each device, as if I were personally signing a search warrant on my own marriage. A week passed. I kept my calm exterior, going to work, attending trials, smiling at client receptions. But inside I was on fire. Each night, back in my office, I opened my laptop, connected to the system, and quietly watched every frame. And then, the day I dreaded but could not avoid arrived. Saturday at noon, I saw Ethan and Sienna walk in through the back gate. My chest tightened. Sienna wore a red swimsuit, smiling as if this house belonged to her. Ethan took off his shirt, wrapped his arms around her right in front of the pool. They kissed, passionate, then plunged into the sparkling blue water, the very water that had once been my pride. I clenched my jaw so hard I thought blood might spill. But I didn't turn off the screen. I forced myself to watch, to etch every detail like a case file. Frank always said, "Evidence must be complete, leave the suspect no escape." I knew I wasn't only a betrayed wife. I was a lawyer preparing for the most important trial of my life. That afternoon I saw them go into the master bedroom. My bed, my linens, the wedding photo on the nightstand, all turned into the backdrop for their raw betrayal. I caught my own reflection on the computer screen. A cold face, eyes bloodshot. When Frank called to report, his voice was hoarse. "Mrs. Parker, I've got everything. Photos, videos, timestamps. No one can deny it. Thank you. Keep it safe. I'll reach out when I need it." That night, Ethan came home late. He took off his coat, forcing a weak smile. "I had to cover extra at the hospital. Sorry I missed dinner." I replied evenly, "It's fine. I was busy with client files too." We sat together in the living room, but the invisible distance was so vast we might as well have been strangers. He turned on the TV, eyes fixed on the screen. I opened a case file, but my mind was flooded with images. Ethan and Sienna in the pool, lips pressed together, water splashing like laughter mocking me. When Ethan stood to go to bed, I spoke quietly. Ethan, have you ever thought that one big secret could destroy everything in just a moment? He froze slightly, then forced a laugh. What are you talking about? You must be exhausted again. I knew from that moment on my marriage was gone. But I also knew I wouldn't let them take everything. This pool, this house, and my dignity, they would all become the place where I turned the tables. I kept everything inside. The videos, the photos, the haunting images lived in me every minute. By day, I wore the calm face of a successful lawyer, commanding the rhythm of a trial as if nothing had happened. But when the office door closed, when it was me and the laptop screen, my heart shattered again. Ethan didn't know I had seen everything. He kept playing the role of the busy husband, excusing himself with overnight surgeries and sudden medical conferences. I quietly observed, counting each text he sent, each call he avoided answering in front of me. One night he came home late, the faint scent of women's perfume lingering on his shirt. I stepped closer, placed a hand on his shoulder. Ethan, you've changed so much lately. Do you have something you want to tell me? He flinched, then quickly regained his composure. He took off his coat, hung it up. You're imagining things again. You work too much, always stressed. You're just paranoid. I had defended dozens of betrayed women in court, hearing that same trick. You're imagining it, from lying men. And now, my own husband used it on me. I pressed my lips tightly. I knew if I cried or lashed out, he'd twist it into proof that I was losing control. The more time passed, the more distant Ethan became. Meals turned into heavy silences. He ate quickly, claimed he had to review patient files, then disappeared into his private office. I stared at the empty chair across the table, listened to the ticking clock in the cavernous house, swallowed by loneliness. Meanwhile, Sienna shamelessly flaunted her happiness online. Photos of 2 wine glasses by a pool, the faint reflection of a man on the glass door. Another time, a shot of a hand with a ring, captioned "Life is full of surprises." My heart wrenched. What was once mine had become her props for display. One evening, I decided to confront Ethan directly. He was sitting on the couch, eyes glued to the TV. I turned it off, sat across from him. Ethan, I've had enough. I need you to be honest. Are you cheating? He chuckled coldly, leaning back. Celeste, do you hear yourself? You're a lawyer, you should know where the proof is. I have nothing to hide. You're overworked. Don't treat me like a fool. The overnight shifts, the conferences that don't exist. I'm not blind. He scowled, voice sharp. You're destroying this marriage with baseless suspicions. Keep this up and you'll end up like those miserable clients you represent. His words stabbed straight into my chest. He knew my weakness, the fear of becoming one of those pitiful women I'd seen in court. But I didn't react, as I already had proof. I didn't need to argue. After that night, he avoided me even more. In the mornings, he left early, tossing a rushed, "I'll be home late." At night, if I was still awake, he'd find ways to bypass the living room, avoiding eye contact. The whole house turned into an empty stage, where I played the role of a smiling woman in public but was dying inside. One night, in the dark bedroom, I heard laughter drifting from the backyard. I knew it wasn't memory, it was real. Ethan and Sienna had laughed together by the water, as if it were their private stage, their voices carrying through the night, while I buried myself in work to sustain the life they enjoyed. I pulled the blanket tighter around me, hugging myself. Betrayed by both husband and best friend, I felt abandoned inside the vast, suffocating house. I saw myself becoming a stranger in his eyes. And Sienna, once my friend, now flaunted her secret man, as if it were a trophy. I told no one. I didn't want friends' pity, didn't want colleagues to look at me as the great lawyer whose husband cheated. I held back my words. But deep down, I knew someday I would have to do what I had urged countless fragile women in court to do: stand up and take everything back. I endured countless nights on the bed that had once been my refuge but was now a monument to deceit. Tears might come easily to other women, but to me they were a luxury. I had heard too many client stories, seen too many women sob in court, begging for justice. But tears never won cases. And I would not give Ethan and Sienna the satisfaction of watching me fall apart. I began to act. As a divorce lawyer, I knew every marital battle revolved around three things: evidence, assets, and timing. I already had proof of the affair: the hidden camera footage, the photos of Ethan and Sienna caught together in the garden, right by the water, even in the master bedroom. But I needed more. I needed financial evidence to expose him not only as a cheater but as someone misusing marital assets. I began combing through our joint bank statements. Unusual charges leapt out: a bill from a jewelry store in Back Bay, several reservations at luxury hotels, even a VIP gym membership under Sienna's name but paid with Ethan's credit card. I printed them all, placed them in a separate case file, each piece of evidence labeled with dates. One evening I stacked the papers neatly. When I handed some copies to Frank, the investigator who had helped install the cameras, he nodded. "You don't want a divorce, you want him ruined, don't you?" "Yes." He took my dignity. "I'll take back everything that belongs to me." My second step was shifting assets. Ethan had always trusted me to handle the paperwork for his private clinic. He routinely signed stacks of documents I presented without ever reading them, because in his eyes, I was too smart to make mistakes. This time I used that carelessness. I revised the authorizations, slipped in a small clause granting me control over accounts, skillfully blending it into the pile of insurance papers and partnership contracts he was used to signing. One evening, as I placed the documents in front of him, Ethan shrugged off his coat and asked absently, "What's this?" "Just a new responsibility contract with the hospital and a few health insurance adjustments." "Sign it quickly, I have to submit it tomorrow." He didn't even flip through it, scribbled his signature. I watched that familiar handwriting appear on the page, knowing it was the mark of his coming loss. But all those legal moves were only the beginning. I wanted Ethan and Sienna to feel unease, to tremble in the very place they thought was safe. The pool had been the only condition I set when I married, and if they thought it was their private sanctuary, then I would turn it into a place of fear. The idea came to me one late afternoon as I stood by the window, staring at the calm blue water. I remembered the whispers of past clients, women who had once said, "They treated my house like a playground, like a cheap hotel." Now I understood that feeling clearly. Only a psychological strike, a sophisticated game, would make the betrayers slip. I began researching, calling aquarium shops, asking about creatures that could live in a pool without being truly dangerous. The sellers sounded surprised, but I smiled, excusing it as a small experiment. I knew exactly what I wanted: something that would terrify anyone diving in, yet could never be used against me in court. While planning, I still played the role of the devoted wife. I cooked dinner, asked about his work, sat beside him at gatherings. I even let Ethan kiss my forehead without flinching, though inside I wanted to erase every trace. He had no idea that day by day I was laying traps beneath his feet. One night after Ethan left the room, I quietly opened my phone and reviewed the latest footage. I saw Sienna walk through the back door wearing a tight dress, lips painted bright red. She giggled, throwing herself into Ethan's arms right in front of the camera. They kissed under the yellow light, then vanished into the pool. Watching them, my heart no longer ached. Instead, a strange coldness settled in, as though I were observing a crime, not my own marriage. I whispered to the screen, my voice nearly emotionless, "Enjoy it while you can. Your playground is about to become a battlefield." In the days that followed, I spent time reviewing every asset: the house, the downtown rental apartment, the investment accounts, and Ethan's clinic. I reorganized all the documents, preparing each file. I knew one mistake could collapse the entire plan. But I was used to calculating every detail in trials. It was no different from a chess game, and this time my opponent was the man who had lain beside me for 8 years. Late at night, when Ethan slept soundly, I opened my laptop, entered the password to my secret archive. Each video file, every bank statement, every signed paper was neatly stored. Alongside them, I wrote a detailed plan, each step marked with dates and times. I was preparing for a trial Ethan could never win. When I closed the laptop, I looked at myself in the mirror. My face was still the same Celeste, eyes sharp like the lawyer I had always been. But for the first time, that gaze was aimed squarely at my own life. I was no longer an outsider. I was the client, the lawyer, and the judge of my own fate. I began my first act with absolute calm. That morning, Ethan left in a pressed suit, saying he had a surgery that would last all day. I saw him off with a familiar smile. a slight nod that made him believe everything at home was still as peaceful as before. But minutes after his car disappeared down the street, I changed into plain clothes, pulled on gloves, and opened the door to the pool. From the trunk of my car, I carried out transparent boxes filled with hundreds of tadpoles and a few large frogs I had specially ordered. I had paid cash, enough to keep the seller quiet. I opened the lids and the creatures slid into the water, scattering quickly. The calm surface rippled, stirred by hundreds of tiny wriggling tails. I stood watching, eyes unblinking. "This is only the opening act," I whispered. After releasing them, I pulled a black cover over the pool. From a distance, no one could tell that beneath it lay a hidden chaos. I sipped my coffee, waiting for the familiar moment. I didn't have to wait long. That afternoon, right at 3 p.m., Sienna's shiny red convertible stopped at the gate. She stepped out in a short dress, wearing a smug smile, carrying a sports bag with her swimwear. I watched through my phone connected to the hidden cameras. Sienna walked straight to the backyard, frowning slightly at the covered pool. She muttered, "Maintenance again? Annoying." Then she began pulling the cover back. After peeling off a section, she saw the dark water below shimmering with tiny moving shapes. She bent down, squinted, then suddenly fell backward, screaming, "Hey, what the hell is this?" A large frog surfaced, croaking, making her stumble into the lounge chair. Sienna panicked, running around the pool, stepping on a wet towel, nearly slipping. The place that had once been their playground became a scene of fear. Sienna grabbed her phone, hands trembling, calling Ethan. Her voice came through clearly on the audio feed. "Ethan, you have to come right now. Your pool, it's full of disgusting things. Tadpoles, frogs, they're everywhere." I heard Ethan's voice on the other end, trying to stay calm. "Are you kidding? I'm in a meeting. That's impossible." "I'm not kidding. I nearly fainted seeing them. Someone did this. You need to fix it." Fine. I'll call the service. Don't blow it out of proportion." I zoomed in on the screen, clearly seeing Sienna's pale face. She hastily gathered her things, tossed the towel onto a chair, and left without daring to glance back at the pool. The next day, Ethan did call a pool service. I watched from the window as workers drained and cleaned, adding chemicals, while I smiled quietly. A few days later, I decided to escalate. The morning Ethan went to work, I uncovered the pool again, this time releasing harmless water snakes, a few small alligator turtles, and a school of large catfish. I knew they posed no danger to humans, but their strange forms were enough to terrify anyone. That afternoon, as expected, Sienna showed up again. This time she didn't pull the cover back right away. She sipped wine leisurely, smiling to herself. But the moment she uncovered the pool, her eyes widened. A water snake slithered right beneath the surface, its body twisting. She dropped her wine glass, screamed, and staggered back. "Oh my God. Ethan." The cameras captured everything. Sienna sobbed into the phone. "I swear there are snakes in the pool. And turtles, huge ones. Someone is sabotaging us." I could picture Ethan's face hearing that. Sure enough, when he came home, I caught him standing at the window, staring at the pool with suspicion. I stepped down, asking softly, "What's going on?" He jumped, then quickly said, "Nothing. I think the service didn't clean it properly. I'll hire another." He lied, but I saw it, the flicker of fear in his eyes. Not fear of the water, but fear of the truth being exposed. That night, he secretly made calls from his office. I didn't need to hear the words. His anxious face and restless pacing told me enough. He was tormented, unable to tell anyone, too proud to admit the truth. A man like him valued reputation above all. If others knew the pool had become a horror swamp, while he and his mistress snuck around, he'd be utterly disgraced. I sat upstairs, listening to his footsteps pacing below. My plan was unfolding exactly as I intended. Ethan was growing suspicious, Sienna terrified. But they both had to stay silent because speaking out meant confessing. I arranged to meet Mrs. Martha Parker, Ethan's mother, at a small cafe near the Charles River. She had once called me the daughter she never had, and honestly, I had seen her as my anchor with my own parents living far away. That day, the air was chilly, maple leaves drifting along the sidewalk. I chose a quiet corner table and waited. Martha entered with her usual composure, a knitted shawl draped lightly over her shoulders. When she saw me, she smiled, her eyes warm yet tinged with worry. She ordered a cup of black tea, then tilted her head at me. Celeste, you've lost weight. What's going on? I haven't seen you two together in a while. It was time. I could no longer carry this secret alone. Mom, I have to be honest. Ethan is no longer faithful to me. The smile vanished from her lips. Martha set her teacup down, her hand trembling slightly, though she didn't look surprised. She looked at me for a long time, then sighed. I feared this day would come. Ethan, he carries his father's blood. Did you know his father betrayed me too? I knew Ethan's father had died of a heart attack when Ethan was 12, but I had never heard this. Martha continued, her voice roughened. Back then, I forgave him many times, thinking the children needed a home. But in the end, I was left only with scars. When Ethan grew up, I worried he'd repeat the pattern. I prayed your love would be strong enough to hold him. But maybe. She trailed off, eyes glistening. I clasped her hand, compassion welling in me. Mom, I already have all the proof. There was no room left for denial. I saw it with my own eyes, and I recorded everything. Videos, photos, even the receipts Ethan spent on Sienna. Martha closed her eyes as if struck hard in the chest. She whispered, Sienna, the friend I once saw you treat like a sister? Yes. I nodded, my voice choked. She walked into your house as if it were her own. They turned the pool, the one condition you once fought for, into their meeting place. I saw 2 silent streams of tears slide down her cheeks. Then she turned to me, her hand gripping tighter. Celeste, my heart aches, but I believe you. You're not someone who loses trust easily. If you've decided, be resolute. But please don't lose yourself. Don't let hatred consume your heart. I looked into her eyes. There was the pain of a mother who had endured, and also the empathy of a woman who had been betrayed. It had stopped being about marriage. This was a battle for justice and dignity, for myself and for every woman ever disregarded. Mom, I will not collapse. I won't weep or beg. I'll use what I know, the law, strategy, and truth, to end this. Martha nodded, her eyes glowing with rare determination. If anyone stands by you, it's me. I once lost everything by trusting the wrong man. You don't need to repeat that mistake. I gripped her hand firmly. For the first time in months, the loneliness eased. I wasn't completely alone. Someone still saw me, believed in me, and stood with me. When our meeting ended, Martha hugged me for a long time before leaving. She whispered in my ear, remember, justice is not only about winning or losing. It's about keeping the good in you. Don't lose your heart, Celeste. I watched her figure fade down the leaf-strewn street, a certainty rising inside me. It was time. I could no longer retreat. From that moment, I knew exactly the path I had to take, and I would see it through to the end. I chose a Friday night. The house was strangely silent, the clock ticking softly on the wall. I had prepared everything. The big screen in the living room, the thick file laid on the wooden table, and a bottle of wine already open, as if waiting for special guests. Around 7 p.m. Ethan called me, his voice as indifferent as ever. I've got a medical conference tonight, probably late. Don't wait up. Sure, go ahead. I knew that within minutes he would turn onto the road back home with Sienna. Sure enough, close to 8 p.m. her shiny red convertible stopped at the gate. Ethan followed right behind as if it had all become routine. I sat in my office watching through the hidden cameras, my hands resting lightly on my knees, my heartbeat slow but steady. The living room door swung open. Sienna giggled, wrapping her arms around Ethan's neck. Told you no one will ever know. Ethan nodded faintly, his hand on her back. But the moment they stepped inside, both froze. The big screen in the center of the room lit up, playing footage from the hidden cameras. Images of them kissing, laughter echoing, water splashing. Then the bedroom scene, their eyes locked on each other, unaware they were being recorded. The sound was chillingly real. What the hell is this? Sienna screamed, her face pale. Ethan rushed forward, pressing buttons, but the screen didn't change. One clip after another, each edited cleanly with clear timestamps at the corner. I stepped out of the shadows, my voice calm. Don't bother. I locked the system. What you see is evidence. Sienna spun around, mouth open. Ethan stood frozen, his face drained of blood. I walked to the table, opening the file, each page neatly stacked. Ethan, do you even know what you've been signing over the past 2 months? I asked coldly, my eyes never leaving him. He stammered, just administrative papers, insurance contracts. You gave them, I signed. I pulled out a thick stack. Correct. And within them are everything: property transfers, account control, legal authorizations. You signed all assets over to me. No, impossible. You tricked me. I smirked. No, I only used the carelessness of a man who thought his wife was blind. Look, every page has your signature, clear and neat. And here, I place the final file on the table, is the divorce petition. The terms are simple. I keep everything, you walk away with nothing. Sienna stepped back, her voice trembling. You're insane. Ethan, don't listen to her. Sienna, be quiet. I have enough evidence to take you to court for trespassing, even enough to have your fitness trainer license revoked. Do you want to test me? Her face white as chalk. Ethan shouted, Celeste, you can't do this. This is our home. I replied, voice sharp as a blade. Wrong. This is my home. You turned it into a cheap motel for your affairs. And now you'll leave with exactly what you came with. Nothing. His hands shook as he grabbed the file, eyes darting across the lines. I saw the desperation spread across the face once known for pride. The room fell into utter stillness except for the videos still playing behind him, accusing endlessly. You mean to destroy me? He rasped, his eyes bloodshot. No. You destroyed yourself. I'm only making you face it. In the house once filled with laughter, only collapse remained. The light cast down on Ethan's pale face. His body stiffened as his eyes locked on the divorce papers, his hand trembling with the pen. Behind him, the screen still showed betrayal, his and Sienna's laughter slicing through the silence. I folded my hands, my voice calm but cutting. Ethan, you have two choices. Sign now and leave quietly. Or I'll take everything you're seeing into court, to the press, even to the medical board. Then you won't only lose the house and assets, you'll lose your career. He looked at me, eyes red with veins. Celeste, please. We once loved each other. I cut him off, firm. No. You were once loved by me. And you crushed that love. The air was suffocating. Finally, Ethan bowed his head, the pen scratching heavily across the paper, each letter signed like a sentence. With the last stroke of ink, an 8-year marriage was over. Sienna opened her mouth, but I dropped another file onto the table. Oh, Sienna. Did you think I only had evidence on Ethan? I had someone check your transactions too. Do you know how many names came up? A doctor at Mercy General, a fund manager at Westlake, and more. Ethan, would you like to see pictures of Sienna's other lovers? I held up my phone, scrolling through the photos Frank had gathered. In them, Sienna laughed, clinging to different men at restaurants and hotels. Ethan went numb, turning to her. His voice cracked. Everything you told me was a lie? Sienna broke down. It's not what you think. I cut in, sharp as a closing argument. Only used him. Just as you used my friendship, used this house. Ethan lowered his head. Sienna grabbed her bag and ran, her heels clattering against the floor, leaving behind heavy perfume and emptiness. At last he muttered like to himself, I lost everything. I replied firmly, not lost. You traded it. And now you'll live with that choice. The next day Ethan left the house with a small suitcase. No longer the proud surgeon, he walked through the gate like a hollow man. I looked around the 4,000 square foot house, the light reflecting off the blue pool. The place once my pride, then their playground of betrayal, now only reminded me of wounds. I couldn't look at it without seeing Sienna's giggles or Ethan leaning to kiss her. I called a landscape design company. Weeks later, the pool was gone. In its place rose a Zen garden, tall bamboo groves, stone paths, and at its center a koi pond. When the first koi swam beneath the water, I listening to the trickle of an artificial stream, breathing in lavender drifting in the breeze. One worker smiled and said, Mrs. Parker, replacing the pool with this garden was a brilliant choice. It feels so peaceful. Yes. Some things must be let go to make room for renewal. 3 months later, my new garden was complete. Bamboo rustled in the wind, water murmured into the koi pond, a soundtrack for every morning I began anew. Each time I stepped into the garden, I breathed deeply, letting my breath flow with the scent of fresh grass and lavender. Peace, What I thought was lost forever now lived again in every moment. While I was reborn, news of Ethan reached me. His days as a renowned surgeon in the heart of the city were over. After the divorce, rumors about him and Sienna spread through the medical community. His old hospital quietly cut ties. Now he worked in a small suburban hospital, far from the glory he once flaunted. I heard he lived alone in a rented apartment, his face gaunt, hair graying too soon. Sienna. She disappeared after I exposed her. Word was she left Ethan and found a new relationship in another state. I didn't care. Betrayers never change. What warmed me most was Martha, my former mother-in-law, still visiting me often. She brought warm apple pies, fresh flowers from her garden. Sitting on the stone bench in my Zen garden, she placed her hand over mine, her eyes full of love. Celeste, I once lost faith in men but never in you. You've proven women can rise from ruins, strong yet kind at heart. I smiled, feeling the warmth in her voice. Perhaps family isn't always bound by blood. True family sometimes comes from respect, trust, and compassion. One afternoon I sat alone by the koi pond. Red, orange, and white fish glided freely, the water shimmering with sunset. Now that place had turned into a symbol of rebirth. A soft smile spread across my face. Not of victory, not of gloating. It was the smile of serenity, of a woman who had walked through darkness and found herself again. In that moment, I realized the most precious thing I had kept was not the house, nor the assets reclaimed, but the ability to rise without losing myself. I chose strength over despair, peace over hatred. And that choice truly set me free. Martha stepped into the garden, calling gently from behind. Celeste, would you like me to make more tea? Yes, Mom. Share a cup with me. She nodded, her eyes tender. We didn't need many words, but peace was there. The wind, the water, the splash of koi, all merged into the music of a new beginning. And I knew from here, my life would be written not with wounds, but with gentle springs to come. Sitting by the koi pond, watching ripples spread under the evening light, I wondered, how many women had walked through pain like mine? How many believed they had everything, only to discover betrayal was all they were left with? But I also knew from such losses we learn to rise, to love ourselves more. Wealth, status may vanish, but if peace of heart remains, we hold the strength to begin again. I share this story not to feed hatred but to remind us. Sometimes, letting go is the strongest way to protect ourselves. And you? In my place, would you choose forgiveness, or step away to find new peace? I want to hear your thoughts, so leave your comments below. If this story touched you, hit like and subscribe to the channel and join me for the journeys ahead. Stories of family, of love, and of the new beginnings each of us can find.